And I've done a lot of due diligence on this, and it's all true. And I'm going to play for you a 2-minute video first from a gentleman who is involved in the transportation industry. And he's going to explain what this crisis is and what matters. And then after that, I'll come back and give you more details, sources, and links, and frankly, open admissions within the industry that this is happening. And then we'll talk about the consequences of this, which will be absolutely devastating for not just the United States, but the entire world. So let's start with this 2-minute video first. Here we go.
1540 engine oil, or actually any of the diesel engine oils, are soon to become unavailable. You've probably already noticed that there seems to be some kind of a shortage out there on engine oils. It's hard to find. Rotella, for example, and Delvac are almost non-existent. The reason is because they're literally non-existent. Rotella has announced they're not even producing oil right now. The reason is because they have to have a certain additive package for it to be diesel engine oil. And the two producers of that additive are Chevron and Lipizol. Both of those companies, that's it. They're the only ones that produce the additive packages worldwide. 2 companies. So it doesn't matter what kind of oil that you buy, you're getting an additive package from one of those 2 companies. The problem is that both of those companies are out of those additive packages. They don't have any. And they're predicting that it's going to be an entire year before they're able to come back online and start producing additive packages so all these other companies can produce their oil again. I wanted it to sink in what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you there is going to be no diesel engine oil for an entire year available at all. Period. So unless your truck can run for an entire year on a change of oil, you need to get some oil. Whatever it takes. If you want to continue to operate, you need at least a year's worth of oil sitting in the garage or in the shop. If you're a farmer, get some oil. You need to buy quite a few barrels. I'm going to buy about 16 barrels. It's about what I can afford right now. And squirrel it away. It's going to become the most hottest commodity you've ever seen over the next couple of months. Anywhere from the next 4 weeks to 8 weeks, it's going to go from scarcity to non-existent. Get some oil, get it quick.
So as you just heard in that video, 15 weight 40 diesel engine oil is about to be completely wiped out of supply. But of course, when I saw that video, I didn't just take that man's word for it. I don't know that guy. You probably don't know him either. Is he telling the truth? Is this real? So I did a couple of things. I called up my source for bulk engine oil because I operate a ranch in Texas and I purchase oil in 55-gallon drums. And I purchase, for example, tractor hydraulic fluid in 55-gallon drums. So I called my supplier, who normally has this in stock, and I said, hey, I would like to buy 2 more 55-gallon drums of 15 weight 40 diesel engine oil. And he said, well, I could give you 1 drum, but not 2. And I asked why. He said, because we're rationing, because the supply chain of diesel engine oil is being wiped out, and we don't think we're going to have any after about the beginning of August. I said, you got to be kidding me. Diesel engine oil is running out? I mean, how is Texas going to operate? Because we need engine oil for not just long-haul trucking and transportation, but also for tractors. And, construction equipment, skid steers, excavators, track loaders, dump trucks, all of it. And of course, just regular diesel trucks need diesel engine oil. And he said, well, none of us are sure. We're hoping there's going to be supply back online. But what we're looking at right now is that this is all going to be gone in the next 2 months or so. And that, of course, lines up with what the gentleman said in the first video there that we played. So now I'm getting very concerned. So I went out online and I did some more searching. I decided to look at bulk retailers of oil products that sell at the commercial level or the agricultural level. They sell in 55-gallon drums. And I found a company called Buy Sinopec, Sinopec. And that's their website, buysinopec.com. And they had an alert on their homepage. Diesel oil price list while supplies last. Quote, we expect to stock out of diesel oil products in the month of June of 2022 and resume back with inventory in the first quarter of 2023. Now, excuse the kind of broken English that they're using. Obviously, whoever runs that site, maybe English is their second language, which is fine. But you get the idea. They're saying that diesel oil, this is engine oil for diesel engines, is running out. Now, that webpage from buysinopec.com goes on to explain that the raw materials for producing base oil for lubricants are in short supply, and that this has led to a worldwide shortage of base oils. Now, to understand what they mean about base oils, you need to understand how engine oil is manufactured. It's really a combination of two categories of ingredients. First, you have base oils, which can start with paraffin or synthetic oils. And then you have additives. And this is what the gentleman was talking about in the video we saw earlier. The additives include anti-wear additives. These are special chemicals that achieve certain chemistry goals inside the engine. They can be friction modifiers, dispersants, detergents, anti-foaming agents, even antioxidants, and so on. So these special additives come out of very specialized chemical factories. And when you don't have these additives available, you can't produce the final engine oil product, even if you have base oils. And as I understand it, and what we're sharing here, is that there are shortages in both of these categories. So there's a shortage in base oils and there's a shortage in additives. And as this company, Sinopec, is saying, they're not going to have inventory until 2023. And the gentleman we heard from earlier said it's going to be about a year out before diesel engine oil is available again. Now, why is this happening? Well, I read for you from the Sinopec website, and remember that it's a little bit of broken English there, so excuse the grammar. But they say because of the corona pandemic, there's less demand worldwide for fuel for road traffic and especially paraffin that's used for aviation. So the demand for paraffin is now 82% less than it was before the coronavirus, I think is what they're saying. It goes on to say that many crude oil producers postponed their planned maintenance in 2020 because of the pandemic, because they didn't have workers because of the lockdowns, which were designed, of course, to destroy the economy, but we'll get to that later. They continue, quote, they are now shutting down to carry out critical maintenance activities, further reducing global supply. And then there was the severe winter in the Gulf Coast. So they write, in February of this year, 2022, the Gulf Coast region of the U.S. was hit by unprecedented severe cold winter weather. This caused shortages in the chemicals and raw materials needed for the production of the additives that go into lubricants. And several major additive suppliers declared force majeure after their raw material suppliers invoked force majeure due to the extreme weather conditions. So, in other words, radical weather, it was too cold, caused production problems, bankrupting certain companies that provided specific chemical molecules to the additive manufacturers, and so those chemicals were not made available. And they just declared force majeure, act of God, cold weather, is shut down, they're out of business, can no longer produce. So now the diesel engine oil, the final product that you need, there aren't additives available because the additive manufacturers can't get the chemicals from these companies that declared force majeure. And of course it just rippled all the way through the supply chain. Now this news has not really hit the United States yet, which is astonishing to me. And it just shows the level of censorship in corporate media and by big tech. It demonstrates the fact that those of you who pay attention to alternative media, you are months ahead of the oblivious masses when it comes to being informed. And I urge you to take advantage of this glimpse into the future that's coming. And I'm going to explain here what this means and how you can use this knowledge right now to reduce the harm and disruption to yourself and your family and perhaps your company, because this disruption is going to be devastating to the U.S. economy and the world economy. And as proof of this, I bring you this story from June 16th, not that long ago, out of Sri Lanka. Engine oil shortage threatens future train travel. It's from newsfirst.lk, Sri Lanka. All right, now you may recall that in Sri Lanka right now there are massive protests and uprisings and riots because Sri Lanka has defaulted on its debt. And Sri Lanka has a shortage of diesel fuel, gasoline, food, and medicine. So things are not good in Sri Lanka, but now it's going to get even worse. Here's from the story, quote, Sri Lanka Railways said that it will not be possible to operate trains in the future due to the lack of engine oil. A senior official at Sri Lanka Railways said that the current level of engine oil would only last for another 2 months, because of course you have to change the oil in the massive diesel engines that run the diesel electric trains, right? I mean, all the trains in America are also diesel electric trains, except there might be a few exceptions in museums or something that still run on, coal or something. There might be some electric commuter trains, but the real transport trains that carry fertilizer and food and fuel and coal all across America, they run on diesel, and they have massive diesel engines, and those engines use diesel engine oil, and you have to change that oil or you lose the engine. So continuing from the story, the Department of Railways said that engine oil is important to Sri Lanka from India and China, and the department pointed out that the dollar shortage has made it impossible to open letters of credit for this purpose. In other words, because they've had an economic collapse, they can't get letters of credit to buy diesel engine oil from India or China to keep their trains running. So you see how the economic collapse is rippling into the transportation infrastructure. And then the last sentence from this story, quote, in such a situation, several trains currently in operation will have to be taken out of service, he further said. In other words, no engine oil, you have to take the trains offline. You can't run them with dirty oil, or you'll lose the engine. And so what we're witnessing here in Sri Lanka is just a little microcosm of what is about to happen in America and around the world. No oil for the diesel engines means no diesel engines, which means no transportation. And this is what we need to understand. This is what the gentleman at the beginning of this video was trying to tell you, trying to red pill you, so to speak, to help you realize what's about to happen in the United States and around the world as the global supply of diesel engine oil dries up. Now, the typical masses, what I call the oblivious masses, they have no idea where anything comes from. That's why the greenies who promote electric vehicles, they don't even know that the electricity comes from coal. They think electricity comes out of buildings magically. They don't understand anything about any supply chain or where things come from or where things go. And so they have no clue that the food in the grocery store comes from a truck that has a diesel engine. And that diesel engine needs diesel engine oil. And in about 2 months, that diesel engine oil is going to be gone in America. So we'll start with this example. What do you suppose happens to the food shelves when there's no more diesel engine oil in America? And the answer is pretty obvious. One by one, the diesel trucks get taken off the roads. They get shut down because you can't drive it without changing the oil. So however many trucks are running on the highways right now, let's say it's, 100,000 trucks, just to pick a number out of the air. If it's 100,000 trucks now, well, how often do you have to change the oil on a truck? Well, a typical 18-wheeler rig on the highway, it can go about 25,000 miles before it has to change the engine oil. That's a lot more than your typical car, but these trucks are built differently. They can go a lot longer without changing the oil. So 25,000 miles, they need an oil change. And in any snapshot of time, all the different trucks out there are at different checkpoints in their oil change schedule. So some trucks may have to change their oil in 1 week. Others may be able to change their oil in 4 weeks. Others, in 6 weeks and so on. But you see, the typical 18-wheeler truck, they put about 2,500 miles on it per week. So 2,500 miles per week and 25,000 miles is when you need to change the oil. So that means if you have brand new fresh engine oil in your diesel truck 18-wheeler, you can go a maximum of 10 weeks before you need more engine oil. Got that? A maximum of 10 weeks. And you could say that if the oil change schedule is evenly distributed across these 10 weeks, you could say that in any given week, for each 1 week, about 10% of the trucks have to change their oil. Does that make sense? So in other words, if we have no engine oil available at all, then each week about 10% of the trucks are going to be taken off the road. And within 10 weeks total, there will be no more trucks on the roads. This is all going to begin in August, according to the information we have today. And that means that roughly by, let's say, the end of October or the beginning of November, unless this diesel engine oil problem is resolved, there will be no more diesel engine trucks operating on the highways. And again, during each week from August through the end of October, about 10% of the trucks will have to be taken off the highways. What do you suppose that's going to do to the supply chain? Deliveries of food, deliveries of consumer goods. How will the shelves be restocked at Home Depot or Costco or your local grocery store? And the answer is they won't. They won't. Unless there is a replacement for this diesel engine oil, there will be no transportation. And by the way, when this shortage kicks in, we can't assume that all the trucks on the road have just recently changed their oil. We can't assume that they have a fresh oil supply. So some trucks are going to be taken offline within 1 week after the shortage really kicks in. Others in the second week, others in the third week, and so on. So this is going to start hurting bad in August. You might say, well, maybe they can use trains. They can just ship goods on trains. Well, the trains run on diesel because, of course, they are diesel electric trains, as we talked about earlier. So the trains, they use about, 3,000 plus gallons of diesel at a time, by the way. And I've already heard from a source that's in the diesel locomotive industry that there's not enough diesel fuel to refill the trains in certain areas in America right now. That's separate from the diesel engine oil issue. There's not even enough diesel fuel. And you may have already heard also that there's a diesel fuel shortage on the East Coast. And that's separate from diesel engine oil running out roughly in the August timeframe. And by the way, that's also separate from the DEF shortage that's already happening. That's diesel emissions fluid. And modern diesel engines have to use DEF in order to reduce emissions. And if you don't have this DEF, you can't run diesel engines. And DEF, by the way, is simply a combination of high purity urea, which is a nitrogen-rich source that's used for fertilizer, also combined with deionized water, which is something I'm very familiar with because I own several water deionizers that I use in my laboratory. So someone like myself, just because I happen to own a lab, I can buy urea and I can make DEF fluid by combining it with deionized water. But the typical truck driver or agricultural equipment operator or construction operator, they don't have a water deionizer and they may not have urea, so they can't make DEF fluid. So now we've got 3 critical supplies that are running out for diesel engines. They can't get the diesel fuel, they can't get the diesel engine oil coming up in about 8 weeks, let's say, and there are shortage problems with the diesel emissions fluid, DEF. If you are missing one of these 3, you can't operate your diesel engine. You have to have all 3. Well, unless, of course, you were wise enough to purchase, let's say, old John Deere tractors. I'm laughing because that's what I have done, that do not have DEF fluid emissions controls on them. Or if you're smart enough to own a diesel truck and maybe you, quote, deleted the emissions system on it, if you delete the emissions system, which of course the government frowns upon, then you no longer need DEF. But then again, you have more emissions out of the tailpipe, but you also have a lot more horsepower, much better fuel economy, better performance out of that engine. So a lot of people who own diesel trucks are deleting the emission system for multiple reasons, but one of those reasons is they don't want to depend on DEF if they can't get DEF. Now, what happens if you run out of DEF? I'll give you a true story. One day during the construction of our Health Ranger store expansion from, about a year ago, we were waiting on a crane to show up in order to lift the giant steel beams into place for the support columns. This crane, which is a large diesel vehicle that drives down the highway and arrives on site, and then it deploys as a crane. Well, they forgot to put DEF fluid in the DEF tank, which has a blue lid on it. And when you run out of DEF, the engine electronically goes down to where you can only drive 5 miles per hour. So this crane had to spend, I think it was 3 hours driving down the highway from North Austin to get to our facility in order to just sit there, and they couldn't rev it up until they got DEF fluid. So they wasted hours traveling 5 miles an hour on the side of the highway. So if you ever see a truck or a giant crane or a piece of construction equipment or something that seems to be idled or driving on the side of the road, it may be because they ran out of DEF. And that's what happens. You can't use the equipment. So you can have $1 million crane or a $10 million train, and it's useless without diesel emissions fluid. Useless. So what happens in the economy when you lose diesel engines? And by the way, this has been the goal of the climate change green movement, to wipe out combustion engines. And in the same way that fake President Joe Biden is trying to wipe out civilian supply to ammunition by ordering the Lake City facility to stop selling 5.56 ammo to civilians, they're also finding ways to destroy the combustion engine ecosystem. And some of this is happening through sabotage of refineries, which produce some of these chemical additives. And some of it is also happening through forced government shutdowns, denying permits, for example, or finding operations for EPA violations because they want to throw the book at them and shut them down. The bottom line is, we are witnessing the controlled demolition of the food industry and also the energy industry. So what happens later this year if there's no diesel engine oil? What happens? Just think about where diesel engines operate. So we already mentioned trucking and transportation. For groceries, what about everything that you find on the shelves at Walmart? What about everything at Home Depot or Best Buy or Costco? You will have no inventory anywhere. There will be nothing on the shelves. And at the same time, there will be no agriculture. Food will be rotting in the fields while people starve in the cities because tractors run on diesel. Transportation trucks from the farms run on diesel. If you don't have diesel, you can't farm. End of story. There will be no construction equipment operating because all the construction equipment runs on diesel. And of course, it all requires diesel engine oil, whether we're talking about skid steers, backhoes, excavators, track loaders, dump trucks, road blades. I mean, everything that you can think of uses diesel. And so that means that there will be no road repair, which means the entire highway infrastructure, the bridge infrastructure, the roadways all across America will collapse because there will be no maintenance possible. And by the way, much of America's infrastructure is collapsing even when there is maintenance. You know, bridges are falling down in America. Over the last several years, there are many examples of that. And it's only going to get worse. And if you thought the supply chain was bad up to today, wait until there are no trucks and no trains operating anywhere in America. And if you think you can just order online on Amazon.com and get prime shipping, well, understand, Amazon will not be operating because Amazon uses diesel trucks to distribute the pallets of the goods that they stock in their warehouses all across America that then come to you on other diesel trucks. UPS uses diesel trucks. FedEx uses diesel trucks. The United States Postal Service, USPS, uses diesel trucks. All fire trucks run on diesel. Nearly all ambulances run on diesel. So if you dial 911 because you have a fire, the answer is going to be, sorry, do you have a garden hose? I mean, try to put it out yourself because we don't have any diesel fire trucks anymore. There's no oil. Ambulances, many law enforcement vehicles run on diesel too. Not all of them, but many do. So what we're really looking at across America is if this scenario comes true, as it currently looks like it will, unless something changes, unless there's a magical new supply of diesel engine oil, then sometime in the second half of this year, 2022, there will be virtually no deliveries or transportation of anything. No supply chain, no food, no lumber, no consumer goods, no packages, no replacement parts, nothing. And this will bankrupt virtually every business in the country because everybody relies on transportation for something. We haven't even talked about ships and barges on the rivers. You know, a lot of boats and ships run on diesel. The big transport ships, they run on dirty diesel. And aircraft run on, aviation fuel, very similar to kerosene. But they only have a limited supply of planes and space on the planes. And even if you could get goods transported by plane, you have to have a truck pick it up from the plane and then take it to the grocery store. And that's a diesel truck. Without diesel, you don't have any transportation infrastructure. Without diesel, you don't have farming infrastructure. Without diesel, you don't have construction. And I guess the greenies will finally get their wish. They will get the end of fossil fuel nightmare that they've always wanted, which is the total collapse of human civilization and the mass die-off that they seem to be begging for. And yet, astonishingly, it's these same green people who are the least likely to be prepared. So they will be the ones starving first. Now, as this supply chain collapse takes place, I may not need to tell you this, but there will be total chaos in every city across America and around the world, kind of like what Sri Lanka is looking like right now, but far worse in America, where there's no respect for law enforcement in these Democrat cities. The police, they don't even in Uvalde, they didn't do anything to help the kids. They just stood around and did nothing. You think cops are going to come save you when society's collapsing and there's 25,000 gangbangers going through the neighborhoods, stealing, raping, pillaging, murdering? No, the police won't be there for you. You're going to be on your own. There will be no food. There will be no rule of law. There will be no medical supplies. There will be no prescriptions. I was talking to a physician, in fact,